My mother-in-law called my child spoiled, then sold her toys like they meant nothing. My daughter cried all night, asking if it was her fault. The next day, my mother-in-law smirked and said, "I did you a favor." I replied, "You just ruined your own life." But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. Cedar Ridge, Ohio existed in that peculiar state between suburban comfort and small-town scrutiny. The kind of place where people waved from their driveways but kept mental tallies of who came and went. Where the grass stayed trimmed not from pride but from the quiet pressure of neighbors who noticed everything. Maple Crest Drive embodied this perfectly. A street of modest two-story homes built in the 80s, each one a slight variation on the same blueprint, distinguished only by paint color and the degree of care given to the landscaping. Danielle Mercer's house sat forth from the corner, painted a soft gray with white trim that she'd touched up herself last spring. She'd chosen gray deliberately, not bold enough to draw attention, not so bland it looked neglected. It matched her approach to life in Cedar Ridge, visible but unremarkable, present but careful. She pulled into the driveway at 5:47 p.m., exactly when she always did. The dental clinic, where she managed the office, closed at 5, and the drive home took 12 minutes unless she caught the light at Riverside wrong. Today she'd made every green light. The trunk held 2 bags of groceries, nothing excessive, just what she needed for the week. Chicken breasts on sale, fresh broccoli, a box of Brinley's favorite strawberry cereal. The front door was unlocked. Danielle's hand paused on the handle. She always locked it. Always. Even when Patricia stayed to watch Brinley after daycare, she insisted the door stay locked. Cedar Ridge was safe, but Danielle hadn't survived the last 3 years by assuming safety. The house felt wrong the moment she stepped inside. Not obviously wrong. Nothing broken. No signs of forced entry. But there was a quality to the silence that made her stomach tighten. The living room looked normal. Same beige couch, same coffee table she'd bought at a yard sale and refinished, same cream-colored rug that showed every stain no matter how quickly she scrubbed. But Brinley's toy bins sat against the wall, and they were empty. Danielle set the groceries on the kitchen counter without putting anything away. She moved through the house methodically, checking each room. The bathroom, her bedroom, Brinley's room. All of it was there. All of it was gone. The pink plastic storage bins that usually overflowed with stuffed animals, empty. The basket that held Brinley's blocks and building toys, empty. The small bookshelf where picture books leaned against each other in colorful rows, bare except for 3 books shoved haphazardly on the bottom shelf. Danielle found her daughter in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the rug in front of those empty bins. Brinley's hands rested in her lap, and she stared at the space where her toys should have been with an expression that looked too old for 5 years. Too resigned. "Baby." Danielle's voice came out softer than she intended. She knelt beside Brinley, one hand reaching out to touch her daughter's shoulder. Brinley didn't look up. Grandma said they were clutter. 3 words. They were clutter, said in that small, careful voice Brinley used when she thought she might be in trouble. The kitchen faucet dripped. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and fell silent. Danielle became aware of her own breathing, of the way her pulse had started to hammer in her throat. Grandma said what? She kept her voice level, but her hand on Brinley's shoulder tightened slightly. She said, "I had too many toys." Brinley finally looked up, her brown eyes shimmering. She said, "Good girls don't need so much stuff." She said it was clutter and she was helping us. Danielle pulled her daughter close, feeling the small body trembling. Brinley didn't cry. She never cried right away anymore. That was something she'd learned during the divorce, during all those months when Caleb's family kept telling her she was overreacting, being dramatic, making things harder than they needed to be. "Where did they go?" Danielle asked. She put them in bags. big bags. And then she took them to her car. Brinley's voice cracked. I asked if I could keep Butterscotch. That was my bunny, Mommy, my favorite bunny, and she said no. She said attachment to objects was unhealthy. Attachment to objects was unhealthy. Patricia's words. Patricia's vocabulary. Patricia's particular brand of casual cruelty wrapped in therapeutic language. Danielle heard footsteps on the stairs. Patricia descended slowly, scrolling on her phone, not looking up. She wore khaki pants and a floral blouse, her gray hair pulled back in the same tight bun she'd worn every day Danielle had known her. She'd always dressed like someone who wanted credit for being proper without actually being kind. Oh, you're home. Patricia didn't stop scrolling. Dinner's in the fridge. I made chicken salad. Danielle stood slowly, deliberately putting herself between Patricia and Brinley. Where are my daughter's toys? I sold them. Patricia finally looked up, her expression one of mild irritation, as if Danielle was asking about something trivial. Children don't need excess. Brinley has been getting spoiled. The kitchen faucet kept dripping. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. The neighbor's sprinkler system kicked on with a mechanical hiss. Danielle heard herself say, "You sold my child's toys." Not a question, a statement of fact. Getting it clear. She has too many things. Patricia set her phone down on the counter with a decisive tap. You're too emotional to see it clearly, Danielle. You always have been. I did you a favor. You should be thanking me. The words landed like stones, each one precise, calculated. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't a mistake. Patricia had planned this. Waited until Danielle was at work. Sorted through a 5-year-old's belongings. Packed them up. Sold them. Brinley is crying. Danielle's voice stayed even, but something cold was spreading through her chest. You made my daughter cry. She'll get over it. Children are resilient. Patricia picked up her phone again. You coddle her. It's not good for her development. Danielle didn't raise her voice, didn't move. She stood there in her small living room, in the house she'd bought with settlement money after 2 years of marriage to Patricia's son, in the life she'd rebuilt piece by careful piece, and she felt something shift. She'd been managing Patricia for years, dodging, deflecting, keeping the peace because Caleb asked her to, because it was easier, because fighting Patricia never ended well. Patricia always won arguments. She had practice. She had conviction. She had the absolute certainty of someone who believed their own narrative completely. But this was different. This wasn't about Danielle. This wasn't Patricia criticizing her parenting or questioning her choices or offering unsolicited advice delivered as concerned observation. This was about Brinley. Behind her, Danielle heard her daughter's breathing hitch. That sound, that small, broken sound, clarified everything. Get out, Danielle said quietly. Patricia blinked. Excuse me. Get out of my house. I'm trying to help you. Get out. Patricia's mouth tightened. She picked up her purse from the counter, movements sharp with offended dignity. You're being ridiculous. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Emotional. Irrational. No wonder Caleb. Finish that sentence, Danielle interrupted, and you will never see Brinley again. The words hung in the air between them. Patricia stared, clearly recalculating. She wasn't used to Danielle drawing lines. Danielle had been the accommodating one, the peacekeeper, the one who swallowed her anger because it was easier than the alternative. Where did you sell them? Danielle asked. Patricia's expression shifted into something almost like amusement, a slight smirk. Why? Planning to thank me? Danielle met her gaze fully for the first time in 3 years, really looked at her, saw the satisfaction there, the belief that she'd won something, that she was right and Danielle was simply too emotional to understand the favor she'd been done. You just ruined your own life, Danielle said. The words came out flat. Factual. No anger. No threat. Just information. Patricia laughed. actually laughed. Dramatic as always. She walked to the door, pausing to look back. You'll realize I was right eventually. You always do. The door closed. Patricia's car started. The sound of her engine faded down Maple Crest Drive. Danielle turned back to Brinley, who was watching her with wide eyes. Mommy. Yeah, baby. Are you mad at me? Danielle knelt down again, pulling Brinley into her lap. Her daughter was small for 5, delicate-boned like Danielle's mother had been. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo they used at bath time and something else. Fear, maybe, or just exhaustion. No, Danielle said firmly. I'm not mad at you. I will never be mad at you for this. Never. Do you understand? Brinley nodded against her chest. Grandma was wrong, Danielle continued. What she did was wrong. Not you. Never you. But she said. I don't care what she said. Danielle pulled back enough to look at Brinley's face. You're not spoiled. You're not bad. You're 5 years old and someone took your things without asking. That's not okay. That's never okay. Brinley's face crumpled. The tears came then, hard and wrenching, and Danielle held her through it, held her while she sobbed for Butterscotch the bunny and her blocks and her picture books and all the small, important things that adults dismissed as clutter, but that meant the world to a little girl who'd already lost too much. That night, after Brinley finally fell asleep, exhausted, tear-stained, curled up in Danielle's bed instead of her own, Danielle sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She didn't cry. She'd stopped crying during the divorce. Tears didn't fix anything. Documentation did. Evidence did. Facts, carefully collected and clearly presented, did. She opened her email and started scrolling back. Messages from Patricia over the last 3 years. She'd saved them all, even the ones that made her stomach hurt to read. Even the ones where Patricia criticized her parenting, her housekeeping, her choices, her emotions. Danielle had learned something during her marriage. Patricia rewrote history constantly. She'd say something cutting and cruel, and if Danielle tried to address it later, Patricia would claim she'd never said it, or that Danielle misunderstood, or that Danielle was being too sensitive. So Danielle had started saving everything. Now she read through months of messages. Most were about Brinley, unsolicited advice, thinly veiled criticism, suggestions that Danielle didn't know what she was doing. But scattered through them were other things. Mentions of selling extra things. References to getting cash for items that were just taking up space. Complaints about government nonsense and bureaucratic overreach. Danielle read every message twice, took screenshots, organized them by date in a folder she labeled simply documentation. She wasn't looking for revenge. Revenge was emotional. Revenge was messy. Revenge was what people did when they wanted to feel better. Danielle wanted justice, and justice required evidence. The kitchen clock showed 11:34 p.m. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood. Outside, Maple Crest Drive slept. Tomorrow people would wake up and wave from their driveways and notice nothing different about the gray house forth from the corner. But Danielle had changed. She'd spent 3 years being careful, being quiet, managing Patricia because it was easier than confronting her, protecting Brinley by avoiding conflict rather than addressing it. Patricia had just taught her a lesson she hadn't intended. Silence had a price, and Danielle was done paying it. She closed the laptop and checked on Brinley one more time. Her daughter slept fitfully, one small hand clutching the edge of the pillow. In the dim light from the hallway, her face looked peaceful, innocent. 5 years old and already learning that the world could be cruel. Danielle brushed hair back from Brinley's forehead. I'm going to fix this, she whispered. I promise. Not by getting the toys back. Those were gone. But by making sure Patricia understood that actions had consequences. That you couldn't hurt people, especially children, just because you thought you knew better. Danielle returned to the kitchen table and opened her laptop again. This time she pulled up something different. Public assistance records. Court documents. The kind of information that was available to anyone who knew where to look. Patricia had been receiving disability assistance for 6 years, housing support for 4. She'd told everyone she qualified because of her back injury, because she couldn't work, because the government owed her. But she also sold things regularly, made cash, posted about it, sometimes on her Facebook account that she thought was private but wasn't, not when you were friends with the right people who shared screenshots. Danielle hadn't cared before. Patricia's financial situation wasn't her problem. Patricia could cheat whatever system she wanted as long as it didn't touch Danielle's life or Brinley's. But now it did. Now Patricia had crossed into Danielle's home and taken from her child. For money. For cash that Patricia wouldn't report. For income that would affect her benefits, if anyone knew about it. Danielle read through the eligibility requirements for disability and housing assistance. They were clear, straightforward, written in plain language designed for people without law degrees to understand. All income had to be reported. All sales. All cash received. Unreported income was fraud. Danielle leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. Her coffee had gone cold, but she didn't get up to make more. She sat there in her kitchen, in her quiet house, in her carefully rebuilt life, and she understood what Patricia had given her. Not revenge, evidence. The next morning, Danielle called in sick to work. She never called in sick. In 3 years at the dental clinic, she'd taken exactly 4 sick days, all of them when Brinley had the flu and daycare wouldn't take her. But today she needed time. She dropped Brinley at daycare. Her daughter went quietly, still subdued, still sad, and drove to the county clerk's office. The building was downtown, a squat brick structure with flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of old paper and cleaning solution. "I need to access public assistance records," Danielle told the woman at the desk. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with bifocals and tired eyes, didn't even look up. "For yourself?" "No, for someone else." "Then you need to submit a request in writing. Takes 7 to 10 business days." Danielle had expected this. "These are public records, correct?" "Depends on what you're asking for. Eligibility information, application history, reported income." The clerk finally looked up. "You investigating someone?" "I'm gathering information about someone who receives benefits while engaging in unreported income activity." The words were careful, precise, not an accusation, just a statement of fact. The clerk studied her for a moment, then sighed. "Fill out this form. We'll process it." Danielle filled out the form at a small table in the corner. Name, address, case number if known, reason for request. She wrote in neat block letters, making sure every word was legible. Back at home, she made phone calls. First to Caleb. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice wary. "Danielle." They hadn't spoken in 6 weeks. Not since he'd forgotten to send child support on time and Danielle had sent him a single text message. "Payment is due by the 5th, not the 12th. He'd sent the money that day without responding. "Your mother sold Brinley's toys," Danielle said without preamble. Silence on the other end. "Caleb, did you hear me?" "I heard you." His voice was tight. "What do you mean, sold them?" "She came over yesterday to watch Brinley. While I was at work, she went through our house, packed up Brinley's toys, and sold them. For cash." More silence. Then, "That doesn't sound right." "I'm not asking if it sounds right. I'm telling you what happened." "Mom wouldn't." "Call your daughter," Danielle interrupted. "Ask her about butterscotch. Ask her about her blocks. Ask her why she cried for 3 hours last night." She heard him breathing on the other end. Heard the sound of him shifting, maybe sitting down. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally. "Because I'm going to report your mother for benefits fraud. And I wanted you to hear it from me first." He stopped. Started again. You're what? She sells things for unreported cash income while receiving disability and housing assistance. That's fraud. I'm going to report it. Danielle, come on. That's my mother. I know. Her voice stayed calm, flat, and she stole from our daughter, sold her belongings, made her cry, and she did it for money she won't report to the government agencies that support her. You're going to ruin her life over some toys. This was the part Danielle had prepared for, the part where Caleb would minimize it, reframe it, make it about Danielle overreacting instead of about what Patricia had actually done. No, Danielle said. I'm going to hold your mother accountable for fraud. The toys are just what made me look close enough to see the pattern. This is vindictive. This is you being. I have documentation, Danielle continued. 3 years of messages where your mother mentions selling things. Facebook posts about cash sales. Text messages to you where she brags about extra money and side income. And I have witnesses who saw her load bags into her car yesterday. My neighbor across the street watched the whole thing. Caleb went quiet again. She could almost hear him thinking, calculating, trying to find an angle. What do you want? He asked finally. Nothing from you. I'm telling you as a courtesy, because when the investigators start asking questions, they'll probably contact you. And I didn't want you to be surprised. You really hate her that much? I don't hate her at all, Danielle said honestly. I just don't protect people who hurt my child anymore. She hung up before he could respond. The next 2 weeks passed in strange, slow motion. Danielle went to work, dropped Brinley at daycare, came home, made dinner, did bedtime routines, all the normal rhythms of life in Cedar Ridge. But underneath the normal, something was building. She'd submitted the formal complaint to the county assistant's office on a Wednesday. The clerk had accepted her documentation without comment. Pages of printed messages, dates highlighted, screenshots organized chronologically. Danielle had included a cover letter explaining what she knew, what she suspected, and what she could prove. She didn't exaggerate, didn't embellish, just facts. Patricia sold items regularly for cash. Patricia received government assistance that required reporting all income. Patricia had explicitly mentioned in messages that she didn't report this income because they don't need to know everything. 3 facts, all provable, all documented. On Friday, a woman named Jennifer Kowalski called from the assistant's office. Ms. Mercer? This is Jennifer Kowalski from the County Assistant's Fraud Investigation Unit. Do you have time to answer some questions? Danielle pulled her car over. She was on her lunch break, sitting in the dental clinic parking lot with a salad she'd made that morning. Yes, she said. I've reviewed your complaint. It's quite thorough. I work in medical office administration. I'm used to documentation. A pause. Then, can you verify that these messages are authentic? We'll need to confirm they came from the account holder. They came from her personal email address and her phone number. I can provide her contact information. And you witnessed her taking items from your home? Yes. My daughter also witnessed it. And my neighbor across the street, Mrs. Rodriguez, saw her loading bags into her car. Would Mrs. Rodriguez be willing to provide a statement? I believe so. Jennifer Kowalski's voice stayed professional, neutral. Ms. Mercer, I need to be clear about what happens next. If we investigate and find evidence of fraud, there will be serious consequences. Criminal charges, potential jail time, repayment of benefits. Do you understand? Yes. And you still want to proceed? Danielle looked out her car window at the dental clinic at the ordinary Thursday afternoon in Cedar Ridge. A woman walked by with a stroller. A man in a business suit checked his phone while walking to his car. My daughter cried for 3 hours, Danielle said quietly. She asked if she was bad. She asked if that's why Grandma took her things. She's 5 years old, and she thinks she deserved to have her belongings stolen. Jennifer Kowalski didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice had softened slightly. I understand. Then yes, I want to proceed. That weekend, Danielle took Brinley to Target. They walked through the toy aisle slowly, and Danielle told her daughter she could pick out 3 new things. Not everything. Not to replace what was lost. Just 3 things that would be hers and only hers. Brinley chose carefully. A stuffed elephant with gray fur and kind eyes. A set of wooden blocks with letters on them. A picture book about a rabbit who went on adventures. At the checkout, Brinley looked up at her mother. Are these going to disappear too? The question landed like a punch. Danielle knelt down to her daughter's level, right there in the checkout lane with people moving around them and the scanner beeping behind them. No, she said firmly. These are yours. Nobody gets to take them. Not Grandma. Not anyone. Do you understand? Brinley nodded, clutching the elephant. And if anyone ever tries to take your things again, you tell me immediately. Even if they say it's okay. Even if they say I said it was okay. You come to me. Always. Okay, Mommy. They paid and left. In the car, Brinley held the elephant in her lap and smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. At home, Danielle's phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Mom says you're lying about her. Says you made all this up because you're bitter. Danielle didn't respond. She helped Brinley set up her new toys in her room, watched her daughter play quietly with the wooden blocks, and felt nothing but certainty. The investigation took 3 weeks. Danielle knew it was happening because Patricia started calling. First, texts that Danielle ignored. Then voicemails that Danielle deleted without listening. Then angry messages sent through Caleb that he forwarded with just the text. FYI. Danielle blocked Patricia's number, changed her locks, informed Brinley's daycare that under no circumstances was Patricia Mercer allowed to pick up Brinley or have any contact with her. The director of the daycare, a woman named Monica, who'd worked there for 15 years, asked quietly, "Is everything okay?" "It will be," Danielle said. On a Tuesday evening in late April, with spring rain pattering against the windows, Danielle's doorbell rang. She checked the peephole. Jennifer Kowalski stood on her porch with another woman in a business suit and a police officer in uniform. Danielle opened the door. "Ms. Mercer," Jennifer said. "This is Detective Hughes and Officer Bradford. May we come in?" Danielle let them in. Offered coffee, they declined, and sat on her couch while they took the chairs across from her. "We've completed our preliminary investigation," Jennifer began. "I wanted to update you personally." Brinley was upstairs, playing in her room. Danielle could hear the soft sounds of blocks being stacked and knocked down. "What did you find?" Danielle asked. Jennifer exchanged a glance with Detective Hughes. "Ms. Mercer, your complaint was accurate. We found a pattern of unreported income spanning approximately 4 years. Patricia Mercer has been selling items online and at yard sales, receiving cash payments, and failing to report any of it to the assistant's office." "How much?" "We estimate between $25,000 and $30,000 over 4 years." The number hung in the air. Danielle had suspected fraud. She'd documented sales. But $30,000 was more than she'd imagined. That wasn't casual. That wasn't accidental. That was deliberate, sustained deception. "We'll be filing criminal charges," Detective Hughes said. Her voice was kind but firm. "Benefits fraud, theft by deception, and potentially other charges depending on what else we find. She'll be arraigned next week." "Will she know I reported her?" Danielle asked. "The complaint is public record once charges are filed. She'll know." Danielle nodded. She'd expected this. "Thank you for telling me." Jennifer leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Mercer, I want to be clear about something. This investigation didn't happen because of you. It happened because Patricia Mercer chose to commit fraud. You simply provided evidence of something that was already occurring. Do you understand the distinction? I do. Good. Jennifer stood, and the others followed. You'll receive updates as the case progresses. If you need anything, here's my card. After they left, Danielle sat on her couch for a long time. The rain kept falling. The house settled around her. Upstairs, Brinley sang something quietly to herself, a song from daycare. Danielle's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You destroyed the family. Hope you're proud. She deleted it without responding. That Friday, Patricia called Danielle's work. The receptionist transferred the call before realizing who it was. You lying piece of... Danielle hung up, called the receptionist. If Patricia Mercer calls again, tell her I'm not available and don't transfer the call. On Monday, letters arrived. Patricia's lawyer, a public defender based on the letterhead, requesting that Danielle reconsider her testimony, suggesting that perhaps this was all a misunderstanding, offering mediation. Danielle filed the letter in her documentation folder and didn't respond. On Tuesday, Caleb called. You need to drop this. Mom's falling apart. She can't sleep. She's terrified. She should be, Danielle said calmly. She made a mistake. She made $30,000 worth of mistakes over 4 years. That's not a mistake, Caleb. That's a choice. She's my mother. And Brinley is my daughter. Your mother chose to steal from her. Now she gets to experience consequences. You're being cruel. Danielle almost laughed. Almost. No, I'm being consistent. Your mother was cruel. I'm being accurate. She hung up. The arraignment happened on a Thursday morning. Danielle took the day off work and sat in the back of the courtroom. Patricia stood before the judge in clothes that looked expensive, but were probably thrifted. Patricia had always been good at appearance. The charges were read aloud. Benefits fraud, theft by deception, failure to report income. Patricia pled not guilty. Her lawyer spoke about mental health issues, about confusion regarding reporting requirements, about being a grandmother who just wanted to help her son's ex-wife declutter. The judge looked unimpressed. We'll schedule a preliminary hearing. Bail is set at $10,000. Patricia's face went white. Caleb paid the bail. Danielle watched them leave together, Patricia leaning on her son's arm, playing fragile. Outside the courthouse, Caleb saw Danielle and walked over. Happy now? He asked bitterly. No, Danielle said honestly. I'm not happy. I'm just not willing to stay quiet anymore. She's your child's grandmother. She was. She lost that when she chose money over Brinley. Caleb stared at her. You've changed. Yes, Danielle agreed. I have. She walked away without looking back. The preliminary hearing happened 6 weeks later. Summer had arrived in Cedar Ridge, bringing heat that made the pavement shimmer and the kind of humidity that stuck to skin. Danielle wore a simple navy dress and low heels. Professional, composed. She'd learned during her divorce that appearance mattered in courtrooms. Not as much as evidence, but enough. She arrived 30 minutes early and sat in the same back row she'd occupied during the arraignment. The courtroom slowly filled. Patricia's lawyer arrived first, shuffling papers. Then Patricia herself, wearing a beige cardigan despite the heat, her face carefully made up, her hair in that same tight bun. She didn't look at Danielle, didn't even glance back. Jennifer Kowalski entered with a prosecutor, a man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses and the slightly rumpled look of someone who carried too many cases. They sat up at their table, organized documents, spoke in low voices. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Saturday. The machinery of justice ground forward in its slow, particular way. The prosecutor spoke first. Your Honor, the state will demonstrate that Patricia Mercer engaged in systematic, deliberate fraud over a period of 4 years, receiving government assistance while failing to report substantial income from sales of goods. We have documented evidence of over $30,000 in unreported income, as well as testimony from witnesses and messages from Ms. Mercer herself acknowledging she knew reporting was required. Patricia's lawyer countered, "Your Honor, Ms. Mercer is a grandmother with limited education who was confused about reporting requirements. She believed yard sales and personal item sales didn't need to be reported. This is a case of misunderstanding, not criminal intent." The judge looked skeptical. The defendant is claiming ignorance of reporting requirements. She signed documents acknowledging. She's an elderly woman with reading difficulties. "I have her application materials," the prosecutor interrupted. "She completed them without assistance. She signed statements that she understood she must report all income. And we have messages where she explicitly states she didn't report income because she believed the government didn't need to know." The judge requested the messages. They were presented on a projector. Danielle watched Patricia's words appear on screen, bright and undeniable. "They don't need to know everything I make. It's my business. I don't report the cash from sales. Why would I? It's just stuff I'm getting rid of. The less they know about my money, the better." The courtroom was silent except for the air conditioning and the soft sound of the court reporter's fingers on keys. The judge looked at Patricia. "Do you maintain these messages don't reflect your understanding of reporting requirements?" Patricia's lawyer whispered to her. Patricia stood slowly. "Those messages were taken out of context." "In what context is, 'I don't report the cash from sales' not an acknowledgement of deliberately unreported income?" Patricia faltered. Her lawyer touched her arm, and she sat back down. The hearing continued for 2 hours. Witnesses testified, the neighbor who'd seen Patricia loading bags, a woman who'd bought items from Patricia at a yard sale and paid cash, a records clerk who confirmed Patricia had never amended her income reports despite 4 years of sales. Then Jennifer Kowalski took the stand. "Ms. Kowalski," the prosecutor began, "please describe what your investigation revealed." Jennifer spoke clearly, professionally. "We found a pattern of unreported income spanning 4 years. Patricia Mercer sold items online through multiple platforms: Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist, and at physical yard sales. She consistently accepted only cash payments. She kept no records, and she never reported any of this income to the assistance office despite receiving disability and housing benefits during this entire period. Did you find evidence she understood the reporting requirements?" "Yes. Her application materials include signed statements that she understood she must report all income. And we found messages where she explicitly acknowledged choosing not to report sales income. Did she ever attempt to correct this when given the opportunity?" "No. When we initially contacted her, she claimed she didn't understand the requirements. When presented with her signed documents, she claimed she forgot. When presented with her messages, she claimed they were being misinterpreted. Her explanation changed to fit whatever evidence we presented." The defense attorney cross-examined. "Isn't it possible Ms. Mercer genuinely didn't understand complex government regulations?" "The regulations aren't complex," Jennifer replied. "They state clearly report all income. All means all. It's not ambiguous. But for someone with limited education, Ms. Mercer has an associate degree. She worked in retail management for 15 years before claiming disability. She filed business taxes for a home-based jewelry business she ran in the 90s. She understands financial reporting." The defense attorney had no response to that. Danielle was called to testify. She walked to the stand with her hands steady, placed her left hand on the Bible, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor asked her to describe what happened on the day Patricia took Brinley's toys. Danielle spoke clearly, sticking to facts. The empty bins, Brinley's tears, Patricia's admission that she'd sold everything. Her statement that it was a favor. Did she say what she did with the money? The prosecutor asked. No, but she mentioned in messages over the years that she sold items for extra cash and that this was between us. Did you ever suspect her of fraud before this incident? No, I didn't care about her financial situation until it directly impacted my daughter. The defense attorney approached for cross-examination. Ms. Mercer, isn't it true you're divorced from Patricia's son? Yes. And isn't it true you've had a difficult relationship with Patricia? Yes. So, isn't it possible this complaint is motivated by personal animosity rather than genuine concern about fraud? Danielle looked directly at the lawyer. I didn't invent $30,000 in unreported income. I didn't write the messages where your client admits she doesn't report cash sales. I didn't create the pattern of behavior. I simply documented what was already there. But you went looking for it specifically to harm her. I went looking for the truth after she stole from my 5-year-old daughter. What I found was fraud. The lawyer tried a different angle. Don't you think criminal charges are excessive for what amounts to a grandparent making a poor choice? I think, Danielle said evenly, that adults are responsible for their choices. Your client chose to take government assistance. She chose to sell items for unreported cash. She chose to lie about it for 4 years. Those were her choices. I'm just not protecting her from the consequences anymore. The defense attorney had no further questions. The judge called for a recess. 90 minutes later, everyone reconvened. I've reviewed all the evidence, the judge began. The state has presented substantial documentation of deliberate, sustained fraud. The defendant's explanations have been inconsistent and contradicted by her own written statements. This court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Patricia's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, my client would like to discuss a plea agreement. The prosecutor and defense attorney disappeared into a conference room. Danielle waited in the hallway, sitting on a wooden bench worn smooth by decades of people waiting for justice to process their lives. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, Jennifer Kowalski found her in the hallway. They've reached an agreement, she said quietly. Patricia will plead guilty to benefits, fraud, and theft. In exchange, the prosecutor will recommend a reduced sentence and allow her to begin repayment immediately. What does that mean for sentencing? Likely 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and full restitution of the $32,000 they've now calculated she owes. 6 months, not 6 years, not life-altering, but real, tangible, consequences that couldn't be talked away or minimized. When? Danielle asked. The plea and sentencing hearing is scheduled for next Thursday. Danielle nodded. I'll be there. Jennifer studied her face. You don't have to be. The case doesn't require your presence anymore. I know, but I want to see it through. The following Thursday arrived with clouds that threatened rain but never delivered. Danielle wore the same navy dress, sat in the same back row, watched the same people enter and take their places. This time Caleb came. He sat on Patricia's side of the courtroom, but he looked at Danielle once. A long look that she couldn't interpret. Anger? Resignation? Understanding? She didn't try to figure it out. The judge entered. The plea was entered. Patricia Mercer, standing with her lawyer, admitted guilt to benefits, fraud, and theft by deception. The prosecutor spoke about the severity of the fraud, the duration, the deliberate deception. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was calculated theft from programs designed to help those in genuine need. The defense attorney spoke about Patricia's age, her limited resources, her role as a grandmother. My client has accepted responsibility. She's prepared to make restitution. She's learned from this experience. The judge listened to both, then turned to Patricia. Do you have anything to say before I impose sentence? Patricia stood slowly. For a moment, Danielle thought she might actually apologize, might acknowledge what she'd done, might show some understanding of the pain she'd caused. Instead, Patricia said, "I was trying to help my family. Everything I did was for them. I don't think that deserves prison." The judge's expression didn't change. "Ms. Mercer, helping your family by stealing from government assistance programs designed for people in genuine need is not noble. It's fraud. You took resources from people who needed them. You lied repeatedly, and you've shown no genuine remorse for your actions." The room fell completely silent. "I sentence you to 6 months in county jail, to be followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are to make full restitution of $32,418. You are permanently barred from receiving government assistance unless you can demonstrate 5 years of clean financial records. You will surrender yourself to begin serving your sentence on Monday at 9 a.m. The gavel fell. Patricia staggered slightly. Caleb moved forward to support her. Her lawyer said something Danielle couldn't hear. Then Patricia turned. She looked directly at Danielle for the first time since this all began. Her face was pale. Her eyes were furious. "This is your fault," she whispered, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "You destroyed this family." Danielle stood slowly, walked down the aisle, stopped directly in front of Patricia. "No," she said quietly. "This is accountability. You destroyed your own life when you chose to steal from my daughter, when you chose fraud over honesty, when you chose money over family. I didn't do this to you. You did it to yourself." Patricia's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Officers approached with paperwork for Patricia to sign. Danielle walked out of the courtroom into humid air that felt cleaner than anything inside. She stood on the courthouse steps for a moment, letting the almost rain touch her face, and she felt nothing but relief. Not happiness, not triumph, just relief that it was done, that justice had happened, that consequences had arrived for someone who'd spent years believing she was untouchable. Her phone buzzed. A text from the daycare. "Brinley had a great day. Made a new friend at story time." Danielle smiled, replied, "On my way to pick her up." She drove through Cedar Ridge's familiar streets, past houses where neighbors still waved and kids still rode bikes until sunset. The town hadn't changed, but she had. She'd learned something important. Silence was expensive. Keeping the peace had a cost. And sometimes the kindest thing you could do, for yourself, for your child, was to refuse to pay it anymore. For months later, autumn arrived in Cedar Ridge with the kind of crisp clarity that made everything feel possible. The maple trees on Maple Crest Drive lived up to their name, turning brilliant shades of orange and gold that littered lawns with leaves that crunched underfoot. Danielle raked the front yard on a Saturday afternoon while Brinley played in a pile of leaves, her laughter bright and uncomplicated. The elephant from Target, now named Peanut, sat watching from the porch, and a new collection of toys filled bins in Brinley's room. Not the same toys. Brinley understood they weren't coming back. But new ones, chosen carefully, loved completely. Mrs. Rodriguez from across the street waved from her driveway. "Looking good." "Thanks," Danielle called back. Normal. Ordinary. The kind of peaceful that had seemed impossible a few months ago. Patricia was 3 months into her sentence. Danielle knew only because the court had sent her updates. She'd requested them, wanting to ensure Patricia served the full term. Caleb had stopped calling after the 2nd month. Danielle had heard from a mutual acquaintance that he was embarrassed, ashamed of his mother, angry that Danielle had been right. She didn't feel vindicated by that. She just felt separate from it. Patricia's choices and Caleb's feelings existed in a space that no longer touched her daily life. Brinley came running over, leaves stuck in her hair. "Mommy, can we make hot chocolate?" Absolutely. They went inside together. The kitchen was warm and familiar. Danielle made hot chocolate the real way, heating milk on the stove, stirring in cocoa powder and sugar, adding a splash of vanilla. Brinley sat at the table with Peanut, swinging her legs and chattering about a book they were reading in kindergarten. And then the bunny finds a garden and it's full of carrots. And, Mommy, was Grandma Patricia bad? The question landed without warning. Danielle's hand paused on the spoon. Why do you ask, sweetheart? Because some kids at school said their grandmas bring them presents. And I told them my grandma took my toys away. And Kelsey said that was mean. So I said Grandma was bad. But was she? Danielle turned off the stove, poured the hot chocolate into 2 mugs, a big one for her, a smaller one with a butterfly on it for Brinley, set them on the table, sat down across from her daughter. People aren't usually just bad or just good, she said carefully. They're complicated. Grandma Patricia did something very wrong. She took things that didn't belong to her. She hurt you. And when grown-ups hurt kids, there have to be consequences. Is she in timeout? Something like that, yes. Brinley considered this, sipping her hot chocolate and leaving a milk mustache. Will she come back? Not to this house. No. Good. Brinley said it matter-of-factly without malice. Simply a fact. I don't want her here. You don't have to want her here. It's okay to protect yourself from people who hurt you, even if they're family. Even grandmas. Even grandmas. Brinley nodded, satisfied. Okay, can I have a cookie? And just like that, the conversation ended. Moved on. Because for Brinley, the world was simpler. Bad things happened. Good things followed. You protected yourself and moved forward. Danielle gave her a cookie and watched her daughter return to her leaf pile outside, carrying Peanut carefully. That evening, after Brinley was in bed, Danielle sat on her porch with tea. The street was quiet. Lights glowed in windows up and down Maple Crest Drive. Someone was grilling despite the autumn chill. She could smell charcoal and meat on the air. Her phone buzzed. An email from the victim's restitution office. Patricia had made her first payment. $200 toward $32,000. It would take years to repay. Danielle closed the email without responding. The money didn't matter. It never had. What mattered was that the system had worked. Slowly, bureaucratically, imperfectly, but it had worked. Patricia had faced consequences. Justice, in its grinding way, had arrived. She thought about the Danielle who'd lived in this house 6 months ago. The one who'd kept quiet to keep the peace, who'd managed Patricia's moods and minimized her cruelty, who'd believed that silence was safer than speaking up. That Danielle was gone. This Danielle knew something different. Safety didn't come from silence. It came from boundaries, from saying no, from understanding that some people would always take more if you let them, and the only way to stop them was to refuse. Her neighbor, a man named Tom who worked from home doing something with computers, walked by with his dog. Evening, he called. Evening, Danielle replied. Normal. Simple. The kind of exchange that meant nothing and everything. She belonged here. She'd earned her place through survival and single parenting and quiet resilience. Inside, Brinley slept soundly in her bed, surrounded by toys that were hers and would stay hers. Safe in a home where people asked before taking, where theft had consequences, where a 5-year-old could trust that her things wouldn't vanish. That was worth everything. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, Danielle received a letter. The return address was the county jail. She almost threw it away without opening it. Almost. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page in Patricia's handwriting, precise, careful letters that looked like they'd taken time. Danielle, I don't expect forgiveness. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt Brinley. I know I violated your trust. I'm writing because my lawyer says I should accept responsibility. So this is me accepting responsibility. I was wrong. I shouldn't have taken Brinley's toys. I shouldn't have sold them. I shouldn't have lied about my income. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to let me have a relationship with my granddaughter again. I've learned my lesson. I promise I'm different now. Patricia. Danielle read it twice. Looked for sincerity. Found only strategy. The letter wasn't an apology. It was a negotiation. Patricia was accepting responsibility because her lawyer told her to, not because she genuinely understood what she'd done wrong. She was promising change because she wanted access to Brinley, not because she'd experienced any real transformation. Danielle filed the letter away and didn't respond. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. Then another. Each one slightly more desperate, slightly more manipulative. Brinley needs her grandmother. I'm not perfect, but I love her. Everyone makes mistakes. Danielle stopped opening them, started returning them unopened with refused written on the envelope. The letters stopped. On Thanksgiving, Danielle and Brinley ate dinner at the kitchen table, just the two of them. Turkey breast from the deli, mashed potatoes, green beans, pumpkin pie from the bakery section. This is nice, Brinley said. Quiet. Yeah, Danielle agreed. It is. They did dishes together, watched a movie. Brinley fell asleep on the couch, and Danielle carried her to bed, marveling as always at how her daughter felt both impossibly light and infinitely precious. That night, Danielle lay in her own bed and thought about accountability, about consequences, about the way the world worked when you stopped accepting cruelty as inevitable. Patricia was in jail because Patricia had committed fraud, not because Danielle was vindictive or unforgiving or cruel, because Patricia had made choices and choices had consequences. That was the truth, the simple, uncomfortable truth that people like Patricia spent their lives avoiding. But Danielle had stopped avoiding it, stopped pretending that keeping quiet was kinder than speaking up, stopped believing that peace was worth more than protection. And in the quiet of her house on Maple Crest Drive, surrounded by the life she'd built and defended, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace, real peace, not the fragile kind that required constant management and careful words and swallowing anger. The kind that came from knowing she'd done the right thing, the hard thing, the thing that protected her child and held an adult accountable for their choices. Winter came to Cedar Ridge with the first snow in early December. Danielle and Brinley built a snowman in the front yard. Mrs. Rodriguez brought over hot chocolate. The neighborhood kids organized a snowball fight. Life continued, normal, ordinary, beautiful in its mundane reliability. One evening, Caleb's car pulled into the driveway. Danielle saw him from the window and considered not answering the door. But Brinley saw him too. Daddy. She ran to the door. Danielle let him in. He looked tired, older, like the last 6 months had aged him in ways that had nothing to do with time. Hi, Brinley Bear, he said, hugging his daughter. I made a snowman. Come see. She dragged him outside. Danielle watched from the porch as Caleb admired the snowman, complimented its stick arms, adjusted its scarf. When they came back inside, Brinley ran upstairs to get something to show him. Caleb stayed in the entryway. She looks happy, he said quietly. She is. Mom was released last week, early for good behavior. Danielle said nothing. She asked me to talk to you, to see if. I told her no. I told her you were right, about everything. Danielle looked at her ex-husband. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you an apology. I spent years asking you to tolerate her, to let things go, to be the bigger person. And all that time she was... He trailed off. I'm sorry for not believing you, for not protecting Brinley, for not protecting you. It was, Danielle thought, the most honest thing Caleb had said to her in their entire relationship. Okay, she said. That's it? Just okay. What else do you want me to say? I don't know. Something. Brinley thundered back down the stairs with a drawing she'd made, a picture of her snowman with Peanut the elephant standing beside it. Look, Daddy. Caleb admired the drawing, stayed for 20 more minutes, left with a hug for his daughter and a nod for Danielle. After he left, Brinley asked, Is Daddy sad? A little, maybe. Because of Grandma? Probably. Oh, Brinley considered this. Then, can we make cookies? Sure, baby. They made cookies. Chocolate chip, the kind Brinley liked with extra chips. They made a mess of the kitchen and licked the spoon and put on music and danced while they waited for the cookies to bake. And Danielle thought this is what she'd protected. Not just toys, not just justice. This, the ability to make cookies with her daughter without fear, without managing someone else's mood, without walking on eggshells or wondering what would be criticized or taken next. Freedom, that's what she'd fought for. And she'd won. Not dramatically, not with a perfect ending where everyone learned their lesson and apologized and changed, but with cookies and snowmen and quiet evenings and a daughter who felt safe enough to ask for what she wanted. That was enough. That was everything.